were so gracious, and they all said that they learned something, so I was like, praise the Lord. But I kept going. They asked me to help do some writing, and I loved doing that, and so I talked to Pastor Robert. I think it was probably 2020 in June, and I said, I don't know what God's calling me to, but I know it's further in this direction. And, he helped me through the process, and I just really felt called to go to school. So I went back to school while I was working full-time at ORU, and graduated 2022, and did some more writing stuff for the church. And then out of the blue, Dr. Rich asked me if I was interested in coming to work here full-time. So, yep, pretty much it.
So 2 things I think we could speak to is consistency, but with consistency came a prophetic bothering. I'd love for you to just speak into how many of you feel like right now in your life that God's, you feel that prophetic bothering? And how many of you would agree that came from consistency? Abby, I know you're, Titus, I know you, and I know the dreams and the things that you want to do, but I know that came through consistency. So what was it about the consistency in being here at Free Chapel that kind of, nudged you to say yes? And then talk about you doing it afraid. Cecilia, I know that you and I have talked about that, doing things afraid, and the fruit that comes from that.
Yeah, taking the job here, I know, most of you are in ministry school. How many here are not, going for ministry? Right off the bat, you're not, you might be in ministry.
It's okay if you're not.
Yeah,
We're not
cool.
gonna, throw stones.
So the majority are. So, for me, making that switch, because I told you about my core fear, that was tough for me, because I'm just trusting the Lord here. But like I said, the adventure that I really craved, that I really wanted, I couldn't have unless I let go of that. Mm-hmm. And so what the dreams that you have, the things that are in you that you want so badly, will not come to pass unless you continue on the journey that God's called you to. So just keep going and do what you're doing today well. Don't mess around. Do what you're doing today well, because it will set you up. It's a foundation. It will set you up for the next phase. And I can tell you now, gosh, I still have so many areas to grow in. I still have so many things to learn. But I'm so grateful for the people that poured into me and the time that I took in Bible study and things like that.
So you were a hygienist. Was it 10 years? It was 10 years?
Yeah, so I started out when I was 19. So I'm 38. I started out when I was 19 in a dental office. And, went to school. I was a dental assistant for a while. Went to school and then, was a dental hygienist for 10 years before here.
So talk about that balance of leaving what you were in and stepping into something new, because that's what many of you, all of you will experience. You experienced that coming out of high school, but talk about that balance of this is what I was in and I was comfortable, and then I said yes. And what was most challenging about that to you? I'm sure you weren't pitched the job and you're yeah, I'll take it. And I'm sure it looked nothing like you ever thought that it would.
Yeah, it was one of those things where it's kind of I knew it was coming all along through the years. For probably 8 years, I guess it was about 8 years ago that I, got involved with Divine. But I knew it was kind of coming, but I didn't have to deal with the reality of it. I was just it's out there. It'll happen someday. But yeah, stepping into something new, it's great. It's exciting. I love the people that I work with, and they're really cool. So that makes the transition so much easier. But literally the people I worked with for 11 and a half years were the same people. And the clients that I worked with were the same people. So it was everything was so the same. And then coming into something different, you gotta learn all new people. You gotta learn a new industry. I know ministry is church, but it's a different type of work. And yeah, no experience other than just like volunteers. So it was a little scary, to be honest, because I'm like, I literally had a moment in the car with my friend Kelly, and I was like, what am I doing? I mean, like, what am I doing? Because this is a dream for me. But like to the world and people that I work with, they scratch their heads. They were like, what are you, like, why are you doing this? Because to the world, this is like the opposite direction that you should be going. But in God's kingdom, saying yes to him is always the best. God's will is always the best. It's always the safest, even if it feels scary. And it's always the most exciting. So.
I know that, and I don't know a ton of you being, I'm like kind of going, I'm going somewhere, I think. Trying to. Being in that place for so long, and I know that there was some toxicity and all that fun stuff, but you were a light in a very dark place. Can you talk about the importance of being that in a dark place, and maybe some things that come with maybe being the only light in a dark place? And I just wanted to speak to those of you that are stepping into not a ministry world, that you're stepping into a corporate world, whatever that looks like for you moving forward. I just would love for you to speak into that.
Yeah, so it does take self-control, and it does take confidence, and just, being there for them, just being kind to them. People are people no matter where you work. If you work in a ministry, people are people. If you work in the world, people are people. So just keep that in mind. People are people no matter where you're at. But people that don't know the Lord don't have the Holy Spirit in them to convict them or to cause them to, make things right with you. It's just them living for themselves. So, you may come in contact with people that are involved in the occult, in witchcraft, and of course you may come across that in the church too. But, understanding the spiritual realm and how to pray in the Spirit, and how to pray, breaking things off, and how to not come into agreement with things they say. Different things like that is really important.
So, being in that world, what do you feel like you learned most from being there? What did you learn? Would you learn most?
Well, it was a really small place, and it was literally on a dead-end street. So what I took away from that experience was I'm very grateful for it, and I know that God provided it in my life, and I love the people. But I believe what I took away from that experience was contentment, and how to be in a place for a long time. Because my life up until then was move here, exciting new adventures, going to new places, learning about new cultures, and then it was Gainesville, Georgia for 11 and a half years on a tiny little street that was a dead-end road. And so it was very different. But there will be times that you'll go into a place and you'll be like, man, I'm like high school, I love my friends, college, I love my friends, everything was just like exciting, new, this new that, and then you'll go to your forever job or wherever God's called you. And that may be something that you have to face someday. It's like, how do I do life every day for the rest of my life, And it might look different for you.
What were some practical steps you took in staying content in where you were?
One of the things that God showed me was just to get outside at lunchtime, which hopefully I'll do that again someday. But I would go outside for walks every day at lunch, and that would just be my God time. I didn't have to face any of the things that were going on at work. I could just be me and have some, just a mental break. And walking is really good if you have anxiety, if you have depression. Natural sunlight is amazing, but also just physically walking is so good for you. And so that was one of the ways that I coped, but it was not just like a coping thing, it was like a God thing. And then also just like praying whenever I could. I would just pray under my breath in the Spirit, so that helped me a lot.
Love it. Okay, is there anything else that you feel like you want us to tap into, that you want to share?
I can't think of anything, but do y'all have like any questions or anything? I'm an open book, so don't be afraid to ask if you have anything. If not, that's cool too.
Well, let me ask this question, and then I'll pitch it back to them. So, Glory then, and then Glory now, what would you say to younger Glory, if you were a student in this room? What's one thing that you would want to know?
I would just say let go, and don't get caught up in what people are expecting of you or what you think you want. Like really just pause and like get tapped into what God wants for your life. And then when you get that, go for it. Like don't be afraid, and just do it.
And do it afraid, because it's going to be okay. Do it afraid. So, all right, we're going to pass the mic. Can anybody think of a question they have for Miss Glory? Yeah.
So I really think that like the kind of the thing of like getting to like where you're that God's calling you to, that I feel like in life, especially with the Lord's will, it's like continual. That like it doesn't you arrive at one place, but then there's a next destination. We're not fully there until He calls us home. So like what are you either like what are you learning right now? What's the Lord speaking to you right now that you've gotten to this place, this new season of ministry, and then like, where do you think He's going to draw you next? Just thinking.
Well, I have no idea where He's calling me next. I just knew when I went to school that it would be something to do with writing and teaching. And when Dr. Rich asked me to come work in the college department, I was like, well, gosh, that's what he's done his entire career. So, like, I just can't believe I get to work for somebody that's, like, the person I want to be one day. So I don't really know exactly where it will lead, but I just knew that it was the right move for me. And as far as what He's teaching me right now is just a deeper level of trust, because I don't have it all together, but I do believe that He's called me, and so I'm just going to press on.
All right, anybody else? Yes. Oh, let me pass it to McKinley, and then I'll come down.
I also grew up in ministry, and I'm so used to hearing, if you don't have peace about it, don't do it. So how did you navigate knowing what you're called to do, but also being like afraid of your next step?
That's a good question. And I will say, even when you're afraid, there's like this different kind of peace. So I don't want to be too churchy, but it's like after I accepted the job and I went to church, because I've had a lot of friends that have worked in churches and stuff, and they were like, oh, you're not going to be able to enjoy church on Sunday if you work at that church. And I just remember sitting in church after I started working here, and I just remember feeling like, I'm just at home right now. Like, this is my place. I love this place. And I literally feel so much peace. Like, even if there's stress, because I'm learning it, I have to discern, like, would I be feeling this as if I was doing the exact same job at another location? Like, if I was a dental hygienist at another location. And yes, it would be all those things. It would be uncomfortable. It would be learning new systems, new computer systems, new people, all the things. It would just be, that it's a new job. So just kind of discernment and understanding, like, what I'm feeling. Because feelings I've heard people say, like, you can't throw them out, but you can't let them drive, You can't, like, put them in the trunk, but you can't let them drive. They're indications that something's going on, but you have to discern what they're indicating. And so for me, it's just like, okay, I'm able to discern, like, that's just because it's a new thing. But it's a good thing.
I just wanted you to go a little bit deeper into the prophetic bothering, just because I feel like there's people who have a prophetic bothering and aren't stewarding it the way that they're supposed to, and it goes into gossip of the church and whatnot. Or there's people who are actually, the Lord's trying to use to refine them, but they feel like people are attacking them, or I don't know. I just would like you to go more into the prophetic bothering, just because I feel like it's not always handled well in the church, and it can be used to attack a lot of people in the church. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know that I necessarily handled it right. I remember sitting with my buddy in the class, and we would kind of just write notes and be like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe she's doing that. Or afterwards, we'd sound so mature. We'd be like, like she just doesn't talk about real stuff. We just need to get real. And it's just, I don't know, like, I don't think I really handled it right, to be honest, but after I taught the first time, I was like, whoa,
Yeah, exactly.
I was really hard on that lady. And you know what? Now I really look up to her. And the stuff that she says, I listen to. So, I don't know if that helps, but.
Well, and I'll speak to that real quick. I feel like everybody, I do this. It doesn't matter where you are, you're going to do it. But I think, especially as students, we're so quick to say, well, leadership should have done it this way. Or leadership didn't handle this the way that they should have. Or leadership, and it's so quick to throw everybody under the bus until you're sitting in their shoes. Jordan Torres is the best to speak to this, because she was like, well, I remember when I was in the college, and I had all these things to say about what they were doing and how I thought that they needed to handle it. But at the end of the day, like, you got no idea until you're sitting in that driver's seat, and it's a lot. And so I just encourage you, if you think that you can do it better, come give it a shot. But to have those conversations, I think to speak to that, like if there's something that you're seeing or something, it may be that Glory could have gone to her teacher and been like, hey, I really feel like maybe we could be, what are your thoughts on us being maybe a little bit more real about this topic? And so I think that leaves the door open for you guys. Anywhere else, in whatever situation or ministry or job that you're at, like, just have the conversation. I feel like that's something that I keep saying this year, but don't be afraid to have the conversation. Don't think, and it's so much better than sitting, I've done this. But it's so much, if we keep it to ourselves and we're writing notes back, nothing's ever going to get done. If Glory had gone and said, hey, let's talk about this, I think, what door could that have opened for that class? Or maybe she would have actually asked Glory to speak, or who knows? But I just encourage you guys, have the conversation. Don't be afraid to have the conversation. Would you?
Yeah, that's great. I will add too, I found out some information about behind the scenes stuff that I didn't know. So that's also important. So what happened was the person that was teaching before her was sharing really detailed stuff about their past, and it was offensive to some people because their young daughter was in the class. And, whether or not that was right or not, she had been approached about that multiple times. She had been like, not just like, hey, they just went off and then they said, you can't teach anymore or whatever. They were just like, hey, can you maybe not share as detailed stuff? And so then, I don't even think they asked her to leave. I think she just decided to leave. And so this woman was teaching our class, and so she was probably like trying to tiptoe a little bit too much, sway a little bit too much to the other side, because of the past person's experience. So I had no clue about that when I was in the class, but I found it out later.
So give people the benefit of the doubt. My husband is a king at that. He loves to do that. And I'm like, well, I just assume wrong intentions, always, which is terrible. That's a terrible thing to do. And he's like, yeah, well, you don't know what conversations they've had or what's happened behind closed doors. So, lesson, just be more like Hamilton is really what that is. So, All right, any more questions? Any more questions? Oh, Scott, not Skylar, have a question?
All right.
Well, hello, Lord.
I think it would be really cool to hear, obviously you are an amazing new addition to the college staff, but I think it'd be cool to hear you share, like, we know you're on assignment for your role, like that is your assignment, but like, what is your heart and burden for this bunch? Like, what do you want to see take place? What are you believing for? Just, I guess, sharing your heart a little bit with everyone, because we see it and we love you, but I guess just giving the students an opportunity to see it as well.
Well, thanks for saying that. Honestly, I've never felt called to a certain age group or group of people. And so when I hear some of y'all talk and when I hear things, I'm just like, whatever I have to offer, I just want to help, Like anything that I have in my life that God's done, like I don't ever want to hold back. So if y'all have like questions or things you want to talk about, I am so open to like helping. And one of my roles here is to help with tutoring. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. I hated school growing up and I was homeschooled. I literally told my mom, I don't need to learn how to read. Like, this is dumb. Most things have pictures, so can we just calm down? I gave her so much trouble. And I hated reading, obviously, because I didn't want to. But anyways, when I decided, because of that core fear, I decided to go to college and do my thing. And it's not bad to do that, it was the way it was. But I did have to catch up on a lot of stuff. So I spent a lot of time in like the math lab, and I spent a lot of time with tutors and stuff. So I know how much that meant in my life and what an impact it made. So don't ever feel like, oh my gosh, this girl's gonna be judgy. Like, no, just come and I will help you however I can. I love writing. I'm not like a professional, but I did have a 4.0 in all my writing projects, so.
Yeah, y'all give it up for Miss Glory. Just the short amount of time that I have gotten to know you, I just know that you're the perfect addition to our team, and we're excited. And what I love about her is she's like an undercover, like, Spitfire. Like, I'm kind of like in your face Spitfire. She's like real quiet, and no, she's not quiet, that's not the word, but she's a lot more toned down than I am. So, and she's very real, so don't be afraid to come. Yeah, so we love you, we're excited, and it's, here we grow.
Love you guys. Thank you.